Hello, I'm doing a movie review, as you could probably tell from the title, and reviewing the movie is my friend Eric Casey of Dreammaker Productions.
How's it going?
And the movie we're reviewing is the 1987 horror science fiction action film Predator.
The one with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
Not the plural version.
No, that's later on.
Right.
Now, Predator, as I said, came out in 1987. The film is directed by, what's the director's name?
Is it on there?
Yeah, John How do you say his name?
John McTiernan?
Yeah, that's probably how you pronounce it.
I hope we said your name right.
Yeah,
Specifically me.
Yeah, he directed, he actually directed Die Hard.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I think I did hear that, actually.
Yeah, he directed the first Die Hard, and he also directed that 2002 remake of the movie Rollerball. I heard it was really bad, but whatever.
Never heard of it.
Okay. Right. Now, Predator stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Carl Weathers, Jesse Ventura, Shane Black, who would actually go on to become writer and director himself, and who else is in this movie?
Apollo Creed.
Well, I said Carl Weathers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, he's Apollo Creed. That's what I know him for, and that's who I think of whenever I see him.
And whenever I see him, I think Dylan. That's his character in this movie. And also stars Sonny Langham. I think I'm saying that guy's name right.
We hope.
Yeah, if I'm not saying your name right, Mr. Langham, you could come and kick my ass. I give you permission. Now, the plot of Predator it's about this special forces group who are led by a man named Dutch, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, and... Man, come on, I'm trying to explain the plot here, and you're...
You gotta make funny Arnold Schwarzenegger noises whenever you mention his name. Come on.
You could do that later.
No.
But they're recruited by the CIA to go on what they're told is a search and rescue mission, but you find out later on that they're not exactly being told the truth, but they go down into Central America on, once again, what they're told is a search and rescue mission, and basically it turns out that there's also an alien creature in the jungles where they're at, and it essentially starts stalking and killing each of these soldiers one by one, and that's the basic plot line of Predator, and eventually Dutch and the rest of the men, along with this woman who they find at this camp they were at, basically they now have to survive in this jungle with this alien monster out, basically killing them all off.
Basically, a screwover turns into being at the worst place at the worst time.
So, Eric, when was the first time you saw Predator?
The first time I saw Predator was way back when. I watched it when I was a kid. In fact, I think I saw it on what was it back in the day? Was it it might have been on Spike, like one of those random channels. Oh well, Spike isn't a random channel, but I've seen it on Spike. I've seen it on like FX, and whenever it was playing on TV, and I watched it back then when I was a kid. I watched it. I even seeked it out when I was kind of like going through like a horror phase. Okay. I seeked out all the Predator movies and all. Basically, I've seen the movie a lot. It's a really good movie.
Yeah. I first saw this movie, it was actually my aunt who introduced this movie to me. It was on TV, and my aunt was like, "Oh, let's watch Predator," my aunt was really the one who got me into a lot of the horror and science fiction films that I'm into now, and she said Predator was on TV. I'm like, "Oh, what's that about?" I was a little 8-year-old kid, and she's like, "Oh, it's about an invisible alien that kills people," and I'm like, "I have to see this." My aunt's also the same person who introduced me to Aliens and like Halloween and movies like that.
So how severely traumatized were you when the Predator actually took the mask off?
I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Yeah. The scene that actually really kind of creeped me out as a little kid was the scene where Dutch and the other men find all those skinned soldiers. Yeah. And it's like that. For an 8-year-old kid, that's a little freaking creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, same. When I first watched it, that scene, it kind of took me by surprise. I didn't expect it. I didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Predator. What would you say? I do consider Predator to be a horror film, but it's also very much an action film as well. Like, would you say it's more action than horror, or would you say it's a good mix of both genres?
Well, I would say it's I wouldn't say horror, honestly. I think I would lean more toward action, but
I still think it's horror, though.
Think,
I think... Because the thing is, genre sometimes can be a matter of opinion.
Yes.
But I would say it's definitely... If anything, it's an action film with horror elements, but I do think there is definite horror
I would
in
say
this movie.
The reason why it falls... why it kind of does justify the horror, though, is because the film builds its atmosphere masterfully.
Yes.
And when the Predator starts, starts hunting down the group and everybody, it's really a matter of life and death, and the fact that it's invisible and heat vision and everything. Like, it's just masterfully done. And like the scene that you were just talking about with the decayed bodies and stuff, like that's the stuff that would fall under.
And
horror.
honestly, I would actually say it's not exactly a slasher film, but it has slasher film elements to it. The idea that, like, these soldiers are being picked off by this, picked off one by one. Like, it definitely... This movie almost could have been a slasher film if these soldiers were, like, maybe teenage characters or something.
Yeah, like I said, that's the thing. Like, I would say it more falls under action and adventure, mostly. I think that's what the core idea... Well, not the core idea, but, like, the core of it, I think it falls under action and adventure genre. But it's one of those movies that splices in a little bit of that horror element or that slasher villain, element, just to give it a little more of a kick to it,
And I actually think the movie...
adding a seasoning of elements outside of the action adventure genre, which is kind of what makes it kind of unique too. Yeah, because an action film never really was done like that before.
The thing the way I feel about this movie is it starts out like your typical 80s action film. But it becomes
then it turns into something else.
Yeah, it becomes a horror sci-fi film. Like, it's almost like the Predator is a character who would fit very well in a straightforward horror film, but it's like they took a horror character and dropped him in, like, over-the-top war movie or something. Like, what would happen if you dropped an alien monster in something like Commando or something? Like, it's almost like... Yeah. I kind of view it as that.
But I wouldn't say it was over the top, though. I think
not over the top. I would say it's actually, in terms of a lot of, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger films from around this time, the way it begins, it's actually a more realistic kind
that's
of
what I was going to
say. It almost has the feel of, like,
these
a
are
war movie.
Yeah, like, these are actual soldiers with experiences and, these guys are vets when it comes to war.
And what I like about it also is, even if the Predator never showed up, though, there's a whole other story that's being told there, because already, they're told they're on a search and rescue mission, it turns out it's something else completely. There's a whole nother movie there, like, it's almost like... You had a horror-style character dropped in this, like, action movie in progress, almost. And that's what I think is actually kind of brilliant about the film.
Same. I completely agree with that. 'Cause it's kind of like, it reminds me of, like, how Psycho does it, where it kills off the,
Yeah, Psycho begins,
spoilers
like...
in Psycho.
It kills off Marion Crane. And
but
like,
think of Marion Crane as, like, the plot to Predator, or... they start off with this plot. They introduce you to the characters and this plot of this thing's going down, and then it turns out something else completely happens.
Yeah, basically the way Psycho began almost like as this drama about a troubled woman who steals some money, but then it becomes a horror film.
Yeah.
It's same thing, this came out after this, but a movie like From Dusk Till Dawn starts out as like this crime drama film, but becomes a vampire horror comedy by the second half. So it's like, and I always kind of like that, like these movies that start out one completely different genre, and then all of a sudden it becomes something else entirely. Like, definitely, I would say this was definitely playing with maybe audiences' like expectations at the time. Because at the time, this was '87. Horror films were really big at the time. Action films were really big, and here you have a movie that kind of combines elements from both those genres.
I wonder if it was done like I gotta look up like some of the behind the scenes stuff and some of the interviews. But I wonder if it was like done with that in mind. Like they had this idea for like this one movie, and then they're like, you know what? Let's throw an alien in there. You know?
Yeah.
This story about betrayal and all that. This is like too cliche. Let's throw an alien in here. That's never been done before.
Yeah, and it works brilliantly. Like once again, it's just
a classic.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie, and
it's one of the best of its time.
Honestly,
of its era,
like,
really.
Even though I do consider it to be horror, I do also consider it to be action as well. And for an action film, this is actually probably my favorite '80s action film.
Okay.
Yeah, I would hold this up. I would
Better
hold this.
than Lethal Weapon.
Actually, you might hit me for this. I've never seen Lethal Weapon actually.
Wow.
Yeah, but in terms
you
of
need
like,
to see those movies.
All right, I know that Shane Black wrote them. When he also was in this, but
Mel Gibson is great, and Danny Glover.
Okay.
But anyway, Predator.
Yeah, but in terms of this, like, I would say this is probably my favorite '80s action film. Like, to me, this is like almost the pinnacle of what I think of when I think of an '80s action film. This like I honestly call this movie the ultimate movie for people with testicles, because think about it, all the characters are like these hyper masculine like men. That's a joke, but because I know a lot of women who like this movie. But
it is true though. Like he is right. That is a perfect explanation of it too. For me, I would say that too. But yeah, I mean, Predator is a classic. If you've never seen it before, it's an absolute must-watch. It's one of the best movies to have come out in that era.
Yeah, and what I like also is kind of, I like how in this movie they don't really explain, it's an alien, but at the same time though, Dutch and his men never actually find out that this is an alien. You as the audience member know it's an alien, but you have that one woman who's with them who talks about how there was a legend of a demon, and for all they know, what maybe this thing is a demon.
It's like a folk tale or something like that.
Yeah. That also kind of implies that maybe not this predator, but that species has visited that area before, and maybe that's where this legend of a demon came from. So I thought that was interesting, kind of this mythology that they make in the film. Like the locals who live in these jungle areas probably believe the predators to be demons when in fact they're aliens.
Yeah, no, like we said, it's an interesting movie. It's, probably those kind of elements you may, I don't know how your audience would take those kind of elements now with like this religious mythos, folktale storytelling type of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was the '80s, and it rides that line so perfectly.
And what I love also is, even though this did come out in the '80s, you almost can't tell it came out in the '80s. Like, this movie honestly could have come out today. Like, the way it's made,
it definitely has aged well.
Yeah, like, here's the thing. I don't usually criticize a movie for being dated, because I don't really care if you could tell a movie came out in the '80s, but in the case of this movie, though, I would say this movie's pretty timeless. Like, aside from they make little references to, like, the Russians, and you could tell a little bit that it's a Cold War action film, but at the same time, though, there's a lot of aspects of this movie that are very timeless. Like, the film almost feels like it could have come out today.
It's amazing to me how simple, like, I know we've spent, like, this entire review basically saying, like, it's all these, like, different things, but at its core, it's really such a simple, brilliantly executed, simple in execution of this material. Yeah. And that's what makes it so great. Like, it is very in-depthful, but it's also very simple.
Mm-hmm. And I also love the characters in the movie. Like, Dutch is a great character. Like, I like how
the characters are great.
I like how Dutch
is great.
Yeah, but I like how Dutch is kind of this. You could tell, yes, he's this big, muscular, like, macho guy, but you can tell he kind of has. but you can tell he has kind of a moral code. Like, he doesn't... This is kind of a spoiler, but, like, it turns out it's a search and destroy mission when he's told it's a search and rescue mission. And you realize that he doesn't really like killing people. He
still doesn't, but...
Yeah, but he's in this job to save people and protect people, and that's what I like about the character of Dutch. And I really liked a lot of the friendships that you see between the men in the movie, like... And even, I loved Jesse Ventura's character in this movie. Like, in the beginning of the film, when they're in the helicopter plane, and I don't know what the fuck he's eating, but he's like, bunch of faggots you all are! It's one of my...
He's the stereotypical 80s tough guy.
And I do like how these guys are all tough guys, but when they're in the face of this predator, you see some of them really start to break a little bit, which is realistic, because, like... Anybody who would be seeing something like that would probably break a little bit.
Yeah, like we said, like it executes the material so well, and I think the reason why it's so timeless is because it does take itself somewhat seriously, which I think a lot of movies
takes
nowadays
very seriously. Actually,
yeah, I feel like some movies nowadays they just throw shit in because it's popular or trendy or whatever. Like, you gotta have some kind of middle ground of realism so you can get engrossed and actually give a crap about what's going on, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I also... I like the character of Dylan, played by Carl Weathers, even though he's kind of... the movie builds it up where he can end up being a villain because of something he does, but at the same time, though, you can tell he tries to find some kind of redemption for what he does to Dutch and the other men in this movie.
And also, I really like to... I really like also...
Oh, we can't not talk about Dylan, you son of a bitch! And then they both with that awesome handshake.
Well, we just talked about it. Well, you did.
Oh, you were going to mention that?
No, I wasn't, but... Best intro of Arnold and Carl Weathers, by the way. Best intro to any best introduction for two characters ever. But, what I also like about Carl Weathers' character as well is that just lots of little subtleties throughout the film while they're going through the forest. You can easily tell he's the least experienced out of all of them.
Which
I love, and you can just pick it up immediately. Like, I found that like really, really great.
What's wrong? CIA got you pushing too many pencils?
Yeah.
That was a terrible Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. Sorry about that.
But still, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger makes fun of him about it, but like you see him sweating. He makes mistakes. I mean, go see it if you haven't seen it already. It's a great movie.
Well, the movie's like what, over almost 30 years old now.
If you haven't seen it yet, go see it.
Yeah,
please.
And also the monster in the movie, the Predator, definitely one of the best movie monsters of all time. Yeah,
on par with Alien, and it's iconic. He's such a memorable antagonist. He's one of the best antagonists in any film, I think.
Yeah. The movie in general it's one of my favorite films of all time.
Same here.
I grew up watching this movie, and it's just such a great movie. The characters are likable.
Yep.
It's scary. It's funny in some parts. Not funny in like a comedy sort of way, but funny in like how the characters
realistic comedy.
It's a fantastic film.
Go see it right now.
You're saying go see it as if it's a movie out in theaters right now. If you haven't seen Predator yet...
Buy the movie.
Yeah, you owe it to yourself to see this film.
I don't care how. If they're playing in the theater, if they have it on Blu-ray, well, they do, but you know what I mean. Go see it. It's iconic.
Alright.
You won't go wrong with it.
Now, Predator, when it came out, of course, was a huge hit, and it spawned a couple of sequels, including the Alien vs. Predator movies. It also spawned a bunch of comic book spin-offs, including some Alien vs. Predator comic books, as well as Batman vs. Predator comics, and even Superman vs. Predator comics as well.
Huh.
And there were also video games and novelizations. Like, this movie spawned an entire franchise. So yeah, that was our review of Predator, and our next review will be Predator 2.